Here we are expecting that a federal election in Canada will be called any minute now. And what a completely different spot than we all thought we'd be in. We have a new, perhaps temporary Prime Minister, but it's not Pierre Poilievre. Polls have turned around for the Liberals, and the outcome of this election may be way different than everyone thought it would be, myself included. But the same question remains. Who is best to lead Canada through these highly volatile times with an unfriendly and completely unreliable Goliath to our south? This video is going to look at Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney to see how each stacks up against the other and what Canada might look like under their very different visions in the face of threats from our friends in the USA. Look, we all bring our biases to these conversations. I know I do. But I like to think that even if Poilievre was my guy, I'd be really nervous when comparing resumes between Carney and Poilievre. What Poilievre does have over Carney is experience as a politician. It's really the only job Poilievre has ever had. And Mark Carney's only role as a politician has been to be Prime Minister. Poilievre has been a politician for 20 years. In fact, he qualified for a full retirement pension at age 31. Wow, sweet deal. But his only successful effort at legislation is one single bill, which surprises me, to be honest. You'd think that after that much time, 9 years of it as part of the party in power, he would have put forward at least a small handful of new things to benefit less fortunate Canadians and make their lives easier. But there isn't anything else that I can find. Regardless, Poilievre knows how government works in the trenches. He's certainly not a consensus builder, though. He's more of a ripper than a weaver when it comes to political approaches. Now, you could argue that Carney is no slouch when it comes to politics, that even though he's never been an elected politician, he's held extremely important positions that enable him to at least know about the levers available to be pulled. One of the #1 issues that consistently concerns most of us in Canada is the economy. And even red meat conservatives who are biased against the Liberals out the yin-yang have to agree that Prime Minister Mark Carney knows how the Canadian economy works. He doesn't just have a master's degree in economics from Oxford. He's had lots of positions in government and private business to prove it. And while it's really important to consider Carney and Poilievre because of their desire to lead Canada, for me, it's not just about the Prime Minister. It's about which party is best to have in power when dealing with an aggressive and unpredictable and unfriendly neighbor. The United States has started a war with Canada. Right now, it's just a trade war. So I think it's really critical to have a group in charge that has been here before, has been successful in these circumstances before, knows what works. The team that was in place last time Trump and his crazy train rolled through town is still available. A new free trade agreement was negotiated by this team, and Canada actually came out of that looking pretty good. In fact, I really enjoy seeing Trump throw so much venom on that team. He can't stand them, calls them nasty, because they stood up to him. They didn't back down, they didn't give away the farm. And maybe a different, untested negotiating team would do okay if the Conservatives win the next election. I'd rather not leave that to a maybe. I'd prefer to go with experience and send the same team back in. Maybe I would feel differently if Conservatives weren't so negative all the time about everything. Canada is broken, carbon taxes driving people into poverty, and all the rest of that untrue, gloomy stuff. I want the team protecting us politically from the US to believe in our country, to see the positives and to be proud of who we are and what we're striving to be. We're Canadian, we care about each other and improving society for everyone. We are not the United States, where there are tens of millions of people who voted for chaos, punishment, and selfishness, every person for themselves. That's more in alignment with a conservative mindset. If we truly wanted that, then joining the US would be remotely attractive. So when I think about a Poilievre-led government facing an ongoing trade war with the bully America and negotiating a new version of our currently ignored free trade agreement, I truly believe Canadian society will be worse off because the conservative mindset and approach in Canada aligns much more closely with the way the US government and over half of the people in that country think. Now, I don't think a Poilievre-led team would completely give away the farm, but I do think we'd only be left with a drive shed and a broken down combine after all the negotiations are finished. Something else I don't want in a leader? The endorsements of certain people who have shown themselves to be, in my opinion, not representative of Canadian values. Pierre Poilievre has been racking up praise from this crowd. There's Jordan Peterson, Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, Kevin O'Leary, Barf, Conrad Black, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. Any single endorsement from any one of this gang would be a reason enough to run the other way. But especially when Elon Musk is telling us that Pierre Poilievre is the right choice for Canadians, you know we're f***ed if the election goes that way. And Kevin O'Leary? That guy would probably sell his own mother to make a buck for himself. I don't think any of these people have Canada's best interest in mind, but all of them seem pretty keen on Pierre Poilievre. While there are lots of very stark differences between Prime Minister Carney and Pierre Poilievre, another important one to highlight is high-level security clearance. This security clearance gives access to very sensitive information that our political leaders need in order to make the best decisions for our country. Prime Minister Carney started that process to get his clearance just before he became Prime Minister. But Pierre Poilievre continues to refuse to go through this security clearance process since the day he became Conservative Party leader. I don't really buy into the conspiracy theory that he can't pass a clearance investigation, but I do think he's painted himself into a corner on this issue. He likely realizes now just how dumb this is and how it makes him look untrustworthy, like he's trying to hide something. And then, on March 18th, 2025, we learned that the Conservative Party won't allow journalists to travel with Poilievre during the next election. Why? Because maybe they'll point out the flaws in the Conservative platform? The Conservative Party says that, of course, journalists will be advised a couple of days in advance of campaign events, and access to candidates will otherwise be the same. But Poilievre has a history of bashing reporters in a very Trump-like fashion during media scrums, so I'm not really buying the Conservative Party explanation that it's because it's too expensive to have reporters along for the ride. Journalists pay for their own seats anyway. It's another example of things that make me think Poilievre and Conservatives in general are untrustworthy. Just look at the recent Angus Reid poll where respondents were asked who is best equipped to handle the trade war with the US. Carney by a kilometer. Who's best to handle Trump's threats of annexation? Carney by a kilometer. And who can be trusted more to protect Canada's economy? Prime Minister Carney. We are just about to go through an election in Canada, and while all elections are important, this one will happen with a threatening superpower trying to push us around. We have a very important choice to make. What are the two things you hated most about the Liberal government? Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax. Well, both of those things are gone. Prime Minister Carney brings experience and expertise to the problems Canada is facing now. He's someone who believes in our country. That's what I think we need. Positivity and the experience to stand up to Trump and the 77 million Americans who voted for this chaos. Not Poilievre, who's been shitting all over Canada for the past 9 years because he thinks everything is broken. I'm quite sure Donald Trump and Elon Musk will have lots of suggestions for Poilievre to fix a broken Canada. Do you really want that?